there is not enough document. Like you can't say, okay, I've given them enough document, I won't give you anymore. Give as much as you can give to convince the officer that you are capable of being in Canada. So the first month appearing in your statement, they are low income. I've seen a lot of rejection based on that. So it's advisable that you give them bank statement that starts with the officer acknowledged the whole fund they saw, but said, in my understanding, this should be a show money. I was shocked in that interpretation.
Source of funding and proof of fund, are they the same?
Source of fund and proof of fund, they have properties, you have assets, assess them. Get them evaluated with a registered accountant. Get them evaluated with a surveyor to give the actual value of that property.
Hello and welcome to today's podcast. My name is Happiness, and with me today on this podcast is an immigration expert by the name of Dr. Sandra. Welcome, Dr. Sandra, to today's podcast.
Thank you very much for having me on today's podcast.
All right, so without wasting too much time, we're going to be talking about issues that surround Canada immigration that a lot of people who intend to come to Canada have. And since we have an expert in the house today, we're going to be, preferring solutions to some of those issues today. So without wasting too much time, we're going to kick off with the first question for today. So, Dr. Sandra, a lot of people who intend to come to Canada have this issue of source of funding, right? Can you please, throw more light on source of funding? What is this source of funding all about? And, how can you show, a source of funding to be able to immigrate to Canada?
Okay, so like you said earlier, source of funding is very important when it comes to study permit or any kind of permit you want to apply for, not only to Canada actually, to any other country that is other than your own country is very important, right?
Yeah.
So, but now we are looking at Canada today.
Yeah.
So we'll focus on Canada and focus on study visa, because that's the question we are getting from a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that's what we intend to explain or discuss today, right? Now, having said that, this explanation I'm giving, or this answer I'm going to give, is not complete, in the sense that it's not the only thing that is required. It's very important if you're applying for a student visa to a foreign country, whether it's Canada, US, Australia, any country, it's very important to go to the official website of this country and look at all the requirements.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not exhaustive.
Yeah.
But I will give you the basic, most important documents you need for Canada.
Thank you.
And if you're in doubt, it's important to look for experts
Yeah.
that understands what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? So having said that, to show your proof of fund is a whole lot of document that you need to. I tell my client there is not enough document
Yeah.
to produce, and there is not enough document. Like you can't say, okay, I've given them enough document, I won't give you anymore. Give as much as you can give to convince the officer that you are capable of being in Canada without depending on the country.
Yeah.
Every country wants you to come to their country and study, but they don't want you to be a liability, right? So having said that, there are few documents which you can still see on Immigration Canada website, which is the CIC website, that are required or that are acceptable as proof of fund, which as if, for instance, your 6 months bank statement. Now, some people will just give me 6 months bank statement and they will say, Dr. Sandra, is it a closing balance? It's not a closing balance. So having said that, from mid last year, I started seeing a lot of rejection where the officers are saying that they have low starting balance.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? You see someone with 6 months statement submitted to Immigration Canada, but from that 6 months, they have maybe 3,000, 4,000. There was no sufficient balance. Then after a month in that statement, they now start having maybe 30 million, 40 million. I'm now saying 30 million, 40 million because I'm talking about Nigerian audience. But now when we want to look at it in general, we're looking at maybe 30,000 Canadian, 40,000 Canadian equivalent. That's what you start seeing from the 5th month.
Yeah.
Remember your statement, you printed 6 months.
Yeah.
So the first month appearing in your statement, they are low income. I've seen a lot of rejection based on that.
Yeah.
So it's advisable that you give them bank statement that starts with the actual required fund for you.
Okay.
We're going to, in another video, talk about the actual required fund because this is very confusing to some students. So having said that, we have bank statement, we have GIC, which I will explain to you what GIC is. It's called Guaranteed Investment Certificate, issued by most banks in Canada for students to pay their tuition fee or their education cost, right?
Okay.
Another thing you can provide is your proof of student loan for student applying for loan. Mostly Canada accepts student loan from bank because they have to be official bank for Canada to accept it. Now we're looking at Canada. Some will say to me, "Oh, I have a loan from them financial institution,
Microfinance bank.
Microfinance bank." Thank you. That's what I was thinking of. But Immigration Canada rejects me. That's because those banks, they don't see them as official registered bank. I can't tell you why, because I'm not into banking.
Yeah.
But what I know is that major banks with the major bank, not the microfinance banks, are acceptable loan institution for loans. So you can present a loan certificate from them. It's acceptable. There are other loan organizations that are known in Canada because maybe they have agreement with IRCC or they are recognized by IRCC that you can still use their loan facility to apply. So a certificate from them to show that you have been granted loan, right? Another one is a bank draft.
Okay.
A bank draft is acceptable. Probably you have the money in your country and there is no way you can move it into Canada, into GIC. You can put it in a bank draft. It's acceptable still, right? Okay. Another one is sponsor's letter or scholarship letter. Sponsor's letter, I would say, majorly for students going for undergraduate when we're looking at what is happening in today's Immigration Canada.
Yeah.
They are struggling with having, or I'm seeing a lot of rejection to say, with students wanting to have sponsors when they are going for a master's program. They are mature students. They've graduated, have years of experience, and they are coming up with someone to be their sponsor, and they have no source of income. They will reject you because you are saying you're coming for masters. You need to acquire more knowledge to improve yourself, but you don't have any money to pay your tuition. So when I say sponsor's letter, it's quite useful for students going for undergraduate. That's what I've seen. Now, where sponsor's letter is useful for mature students is if you're getting a scholarship from a recognized institution. Canada will say a scholarship from a scholarship institution in Canada. Right? So you won't say a scholarship from my uncle's business. That wouldn't work. If you understand what I mean. Right? So moving on. Another one is any other investment certificate, really. Like in your country, you could have shares in a multinational company. For instance, I've seen some of my clients having shares with Shell, Chevron, bigger transport firms, or even I've seen one with all this Bitcoin that are quite recognized. Those investment certificates, you can use them. They count. But now, when you're presenting this investment certificate, I advise my client not to make it their primary source of proof of fund. What does that mean? Because Canada requires you to have a certain amount of money for your first year and a certain amount of money for your tuition fee first year, flight fare first year. We'll discuss this when we go into specific documents that need or the actual amount you need for a student to come to Canada. We'll go into that. You don't want to use those kind of investment certificates. You say in your account you have $0 or you have $3,000 and then you give them Bitcoin. And then you said, I have a Bitcoin investment of 50,000 Canadian dollars that I will use to pay my school fees. No, remember Bitcoin is fluctuating. I'm not into Bitcoin, but from what I've done with my clients, I could see that it's not a steady market and it could go in 1 minute. All the money will go because of bad investment decisions. They don't want to see that. They want you converting that money and showing them that, see, this money was in Bitcoin. It was in Bitcoin. It was my money. but now I've converted it to Canadian dollar in GIC.
Yeah.
You need to show them the trace.
Yeah.
Because someone came to me, they had a rejection. I was like, I had my money in GIC and they rejected me. Yes, that's true. That's because you didn't show them where the money came from. So they are thinking it's show money. This is what is rampant now because of how things are, situation of things. It is a general thing in the universe now.
They didn't show that the money moved from
An account of theirs.
An account to the GIC.
So the officers rejected, saying no proof of source of fund.
Okay.
Remember that they are there as government entity too. They want to make sure that you're not doing money laundering.
Yeah.
So you need to show them how that money came.
Came by, yeah.
So show them it came from an investment. That's when you bring those investment certificates. I sold these shares. I sold this house.
Yeah.
I did this. I did that, and I raised the money. It's now in my GIC, which is a guaranteed investments account for students in Canada, so that I can use it for my study in Canada. Right? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Now,
can I quickly ask you a question?
Okay.
Just try to answer in a very, try to be very concise with the answer, very short answer.
Okay.
Source of funding and proof of fund, are they the same?
Source of fund and proof of fund, they are kind of interrelated.
Yes.
Source of fund is where the money came from.
Yeah.
Proof of fund is availability of that money.
All right.
So one cannot go without another. That's why you're seeing rejection, even when the student have all the required fund in their account for even the specific period of time.
Okay.
So they have proof of fund.
Yeah.
They've shown we have the flight fare, the maintenance fare, my total tuition fee.
Yeah.
I've seen a client that came to me about rejection. They had all the money, but they had rejection. And I said, do you know why you had rejection based on your proof of fund? Because there is no source of fund. So the officer is wondering, how did you get that? There was no employment. You didn't show any employment. You didn't show that there was a liquidation of your property to raise that money. You didn't show any source of business that raised that money. So the officer is now thinking this is a sure money.
So this could be the sources of the funding then. Sources of the funding could be stuff like things like liquidation, things like what else? Employment,
yes.
Okay. So what other sources of funding do you think there could be? So the money could come from
an investment you had before, your liquidation of your property that you had, from your investment, like say you're into property, and then you have tenants renting your property, and they pay you your rent.
So rental from those properties.
Yes, your fees, your employment salary is investment. Your savings that you've got in the account. Okay. So these are your sources of funds.
Okay.
You need to actually show them your sources of funds and the proof of the availability of that fund.
So you show sources of the funds, source or sources of the funds, as well as proof of the availability of those funds.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what Immigration Canada is migrating into. Because now they have a lot of students that come into Canada, show them proof of fund, but not sources of fund. At the end of the day, they come into Canada, they have jumped into asylum seeking because of lack of fund.
Yeah.
Now, they have decided, okay, we have heard about show money.
Okay.
I actually got a rejection letter, a GIC note from a student. The officer said, I saw the money. The officer acknowledged the whole fund they saw, but said, in my understanding, this should be a show money. I was shocked in that interpretation. But you can't blame the officer, because looking at what this client did is mostly with the people that do DIY.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So looking at what this client did, you will see that they gave all the money, had all the money, but never told the officer where the money came from. We addressed that and we got an approval.
So now you're saying that doing DIY is good on one hand, but on the other hand, it could still be a problem, especially if you don't really understand in depth how these visa officers think.
Yes.
So it's advisable to use a consultant if you can.
If you can.
If you can.
If you cannot, it's advisable, because there are so many ways to use a consultant. You can actually give the consultant the application to do full time.
Okay.
And then some people will come to me and say they don't have the money to pay because things are becoming expensive.
Yeah.
then I'll say, why don't you do your application? Then get the consultant to review your application. You pay them, which will not be as much as them doing,
just
putting
to
their time to review them and advise you and tell you, okay, yeah, you have done this, you have given them this, but you need this and
but
that
you
and
need
that.
to do this.
Yeah, so I always and always will always advise you
to
seek the opinion of an expert who understands what they're doing.
Okay, so moving on, some students who want to come to Canada, they show up with all kinds of sponsors, you know. So I would like you to clarify who could be a sponsor for somebody who wants to come to Canada to study. Who can be a sponsor for that person, for that intending student?
Okay. Just like I said in between my explanation the first time.
Yeah.
I don't advise mature students to have sponsor other than your spouse.
Yeah.
So if you're in a relationship, it's your spouse.
So this is talking about people who
are mature students. Before we can digress,
who are coming to do like master's programs or postgraduate programs.
A lot of mature students coming to do master's program, coming to do a postgraduate program. Some of them will still come to do diploma.
Yeah.
Because, well, who is a master student? That's the question. That's the
who is a mature student?
Yeah, that should have been the first question. Mature student in immigration category is someone who has finished undergraduate.
Yeah.
If you've done your undergraduate before, undergraduate includes diploma, your diploma, which is OND, HND for Nigeria, bachelor's degree. If you've done your first degree in any capacity, you're a mature student. Now, there are some students that have not done this degree. For some reason, maybe they have mitigated circumstance, lost their sponsors, their parents, or their sponsors, financial sponsors, where they were about entering university. They had to go work.
Probably chose the business route.
Well, that's what I'm saying. For their own reason, didn't do their undergraduate, but they are now over 25. They're mature students.
Okay.
Because once a client came to me and said, but I've not done my bachelor's degree. I don't fall within the category. No, your age has made you fall within that category. Right? So once you are in this category, my honest advice to you is to use your spouse as your sponsor.
Okay.
In as much as you're using a sponsor that is not a scholarship sponsor.
Okay.
Right? You need to have the required funding in your name.
Okay.
I've even started having that problem with undergraduate students now. Yeah. You need to have it in your name, in the applicant or the student name. So that's the reason why they brought this GIC now, allowing international students to buy into this GIC. Because we are now seeing that even some visa officers are now migrating to say the undergraduate students do not have available funding, even when their parents have provided all the money. Now, what I've done in my own practice to see if I will mitigate that, and it worked, was now telling the parents, since you have this money available for your undergraduate student, why don't you deposit it into a GIC for them?
Yeah.
It works for some people. We got the visa. Some we had issues because the banks they have in their home country wouldn't let the underage student. I had an 18-year-old student who they wouldn't allow to open an account. Under 18. She was 17, turning 18 to come and do undergraduate in Canada. But they wouldn't let her open an account. And then making it impossible to transfer the money into GIC for her, because one of the requirements for GIC account in Canada is that the money will originate from an account domicile in the applicant's country, in the applicant's name.
Okay.
So you can't get money from your parents' account into the GIC. So that was one of the limitations. But when we tried this process, it didn't work. We got the proof that we tried, and it didn't work. So we included it in our application, said, this was our intention, to create a GIC account where we show that this money is readily available for this student.
Okay.
But because of the age limitation, we were not able to do that.
All right.
Then we gave document evidence of approaching the bank saying no, and the requirement for GIC, so we had to use the parent's account. This visa was approved. So what I'm trying to say is, if they are coming for undergraduate, it is still well within the regulation that they can use a sponsor. Now, when you're coming as a mature student, Your only sponsor, honestly, should be your spouse.
Spouse.
And maybe a scholarship body, recognized Canadian scholarship body. Remember, we're focusing on Canada. When we look at other countries, we can now look at other possibilities, because there are countries that will allow you sponsors of your company where you're working, like UK will allow that, America will allow that, but Canada is very particular.
Yeah.
So that's why it's becoming more difficult for Canada, right? So in answering your question in summary,
Yeah.
sponsor is someone that provides the funding for you.
Yeah.
But my advice will be, for a mature student, let it be your spouse.
Okay.
To say, I have all this money in my account. I have my first year tuition fee. I have my first year maintenance. I have my flight available in my account.
Yeah.
But the subsequent years, my spouse is going to
make
provisions for that, because once you're studying, you're not supposed to be working.
Exactly.
I remember one of the regulations in Canada is that for you to be a bona fide student, you need to prove that you have available funding to pay for your duration of studies in Canada without having to work in Canada.
Yeah.
Because I see some people saying, but I can come and work and save money. You can't tell them that, because the regulation says have available funding without coming to work in Canada.
Yeah, you should have.
So for the subsequent years, you say, my spouse, who is going to be working as this and that, earn this amount of money, and that amount of money can
foot the bills. Yeah.
Foot the bills. Yeah. And then you provide documents for that to your sponsor. If it is your parents, you provide document. I have seen, like I said about document, you cannot exhaust it. If you have properties, you have assets, assess them. Get them evaluated with a registered accountant. Get them evaluated with a surveyor to give the actual value of that property.
Okay.
Because you can't just give them property document and you expect them to know, I have property in Ikoyi, Lagos. And if there is need, I will get rent from that. They don't know how much that costs.
Yes.
So you have to evaluate it. This is what, initially, it wasn't like this. Because all this cost a lot of money. But now, things are becoming tighter. Policies are becoming tighter. And you won't blame Canada for this. Because a lot of people have been taking advantage of the process. So they are making it stricter to make sure that they are getting the bona fide student coming to study in Canada, instead of closing the window for everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, that's really very, very enlightening. So quickly, before we round off today's episode, can you just talk to us a little bit about GIC?
Okay. Right. GIC.
Yes.
You know why I say right, GIC? This question comes up every time.
Oh, yeah?
And I don't think in one video we can exhaust what GIC is, but I'll give you a brief overview of what GIC is.
Yeah, we can
then we can
expand
more on it, or you can go to the official websites of these banks. Be careful. There are cloning banks. I would overemphasize on it, being a victim of swindle. It's important you make sure that you're on their right website. If you do not know, maybe under this video, we're going to drop the link to some of these banks so you can use them and go directly to their site. If you're in doubt, give them a call.
Yeah.
And make sure that you are onto their right website. Right? Okay, so what is GIC? Like I said earlier, it's guaranteed investment banking that students can use to show proof of their education cost, of the availability of their education cost and their tuition fee. Right? So there are a lot of banks that works in Canada with the GIC now. Canada has made it you have banks like CIBC. I prefer CIBC, the SIBO options, because their options are very, their rate is good. Not only that, I'm not marketing for CIBC. They didn't pay me that, but I've used them. They are fairly easy to approach and ask questions if you have issues with your banking, but they have RBC, you have Scotiabank, too. You have main CIBC.
So virtually almost all the main banks
in Canada
do GIC.
Yeah, they do GIC.
Okay.
But you have to look at the policy to know which one works for you based on how they do it. So GIC is recognized by Immigration Canada as one of your proof of fund.
Okay.
Or even they favor it more if you can
have a GIC.
If you have a GIC.
Okay.
Because the money is now in Canada and that money is secured.
Okay.
Any money you deposit with GIC is secured with Canada Deposit Insurance.
Okay.
So now, how a lot of people were calling me there about November, because as of November 1st, if I'm not correct, November 1st or November 8th, but in November, Immigration Canada stopped the NSE and the SDS. The NSE is the Nigerian Student Express, and the SDS is the Student Direct Stream.
Okay.
This is the stream that they were using to fast track application for people that had the GIC or the required amount of funding.
Okay.
They started mostly during the COVID period. But for fairness and equality, they stopped it this year. Now, some people thought that GIC was affected. No, GIC was not affected. What happened was some bank post on their GIC direct investment certificate and shifted into what is called the Student Deposit Program.
Student Deposit Program.
Yeah, so how GIC works is you buy the certificate. It's an invested certificate that will give you interest for the period of time your money is in that GIC. As soon as your visa is approved and you come into Canada, you go to the bank that you bought the GIC from, then prove yourself, go to show them your student visa, your proof of your biodata page, passport, because you used your passport, your admission letter, those documents that you used to open the account. You have to now show them. Once they have confirmed that is your account, they are going to open a bank account that is now called the Student Deposit Account.
Okay.
So now when this November came, what they did was pausing on the GIC, creating a new GIC account. They started doing direct student deposit account.
Okay.
So creating a bank account that is direct student deposit account. Now, having said that, I remember I said earlier that I like the CIBC ISBO account, because that gave you the option from beginning. That's why I was using it compared to the other banks. The other banks were doing GIC directly. But the CIBC ISBO was actually giving you the two options. So now this option of direct student deposit, the difference is that as soon as you're here, you have your money available and you can decide how you want your money given back to you.
Okay.
Whereas with the GIC, it's broken down into 12 months.
Oh, okay.
So my students were worried because sometimes they will break it into 12 months. They are already in Canada. They want to pay for rent and they found a house where they have to pay $3,000 upfront. But because the money was broken down in 12 months, they are only allowed $1,200 or $1,300 per month. They start struggling with accommodation.
Okay.
So I now tell them, no, instead of going into the GIC, why don't we do the student direct deposit, where you now decide the amount of money you withdraw, because it's your bank.
It's your money anyway.
It's your money anyway. So if you come to Canada and you find a property where you have to pay $3,000 or $2,000 to start over, you want to buy a car because your school is far and all that, you are able to withdraw the amount of money you have.
So she'll be able to withdraw it.
So that was the difference. It wasn't that GIC got stopped.
Okay.
They are still using GIC.
Just that they changed how much you could take out of that account.
They changed the approach where they do the investment now for you as the student. And what actually stopped is the SDS and the NSE.
Okay.
So having said that, GIC is an account that allows you to deposit your money that you use for your education cost or your maintenance cost. And it allows a $10,000 to $50,000 deposit. Okay. Now, another difference between GIC and the student deposit international student deposit program is that GIC allows you one-off deposit.
Okay.
So assuming you set it up and you want to deposit 10,000 or 20,000, but your banks, I've seen some banks that will say, we can't send 10,000, 20,000 in one go because it's the first time you are ever sending money abroad. For safety of money and the regulation in your country, they want to send maybe 10,000 and then send another 10,000. With GIC, you can't do that.
Okay.
Because it's only one deposit.
One time,
One-time deposit. But with this, with the international student deposit, you can do up to 4 or 5 times.
Okay.
So you can do 10,000. When the money clears, then you set up another transfer request, and then they will give you a non-deposit. So that was why I favored.
You bought into that, yeah.
Yes, I bought into the ISBO idea program with the international student deposit. Yeah. But now most banks have moved into that to international student deposit.
Oh yeah.
From when you are outside the country instead of when you are in the country.
Yeah. It helps. I think it favors the the banks in those other countries more, because especially if it's your first time traveling out, this is obviously the first time that person will be sending out that amount of money. So because of regulations and policies, I guess these banks feel it's more ideal to just send those amounts, even though they're sending those monies to, they know they're sending it to Canada and the account is a legit account, but still they want to be sure on their own part by just sending the money in bits and pieces, just in case something goes wrong, just for their own safety, I guess. And then because of probably bank policies.
Not
countries-
only for the bank safety, for your safety as the consumer
as
too.
the owner of the money as
Yeah,
well.
because sometimes it's not because the bank is not the real bank or the account is not the real account.
Mhm.
Sometimes money get lost in transit.
Okay.
Because I do,
Yeah, that's true.
I'm an education consultant and immigration consultant. I've seen students pay money to the right account from the right bank, but he has issues on transit.
Yeah.
The banks, the generating bank and the receiving bank start working to trace that money.
To trace the money.
Yeah, so assuming it's all your money, 30,000, it's lost.
In one go, it's gone.
If it's not traceable, it's gone.
Then it's gone. Yeah.
And it's real. We lose money.
That's the safety.
So it's the safety net for yourself
Yes.
as the consumer.
The owner of
It's
the
a safety net for the banker, for the bank, that your originating bank. Is a safety net for the bank, the receiving bank.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of money laundering and control. So honestly, I tell people, it might stress you, like going 2-3 times, but it's safer.
It's safer that way.
I wasn't maybe last year, by this time last year, I might not be sounding this way. But when I became a victim, I realized that nobody is above it.
Yeah.
You can actually be a victim from a decision that you've made. So it's important to be safe anyways.
All right. So thank you very much for today's episode. It's really been enlightening. We've learned a lot. I personally have learned a lot from today's discussion. I'm really happy that we had this discussion. And I believe a lot of people watching this podcast today have also learned a lot from all that you have said. Okay, so we're going to be ending this podcast here. We're going to have more, episodes talking about more issues that surround Canada immigration and students and permanent residence issues and stuff like that. So if this is something that you're really interested in, make sure that you subscribe to this channel, because we're going to be talking about more of these issues, helping you to be able to navigate your way through some of these problems. So subscribe to this channel. Whenever these videos drop, you're going to get the notification, and then you can get the information firsthand as it drops. Okay. Thank you for watching today's episode. We're going to see you on the next video. Take care and bye-bye.
Bye.